Happy Brew Wednesday, folks. I'm doing quite an early one this week because I'm off to Berlin for a holiday on Wednesday for a few days. Got my Monopoly money ready and everything. So I'm going to be strapping on my lederhosen and drinking some Berliner Weisses and stuff like that. I'm looking for some good sausage, but mainly good beers. Obviously, because it's a few days there. I'm not going to be driving at all, so cheers to that. Now, what is this wonderful glass tower next to me, I hear you wonder? Kiln jars, obviously, for those of you that know. For those of you that don't, they're basically used for storing and preserving things, like preserves, funnily enough. And they're a bit like Grolsch bottles. Boom. Exactly like Grolsch bottles, but jars. Doesn't really need any more explanation than that. Except to say that they're kind of temperature resistant as well, so you can sterilise them or sanitise them by putting them in boiling water and that sort of thing. In fact, the reason why I got these is because Gash Slug did a great video on harvesting yeast and using them for future batches, recycling yeast, that sort of thing. In which he used I haven't watched it for a while, but he used a combination of these to harvest the yeast from the tribe of a batch of beer. But these were actually £2 a pop for the smaller ones and £3 for the big ones, so £7. Can't go wrong. Beautiful. Pineapple cider. I don't know if you can call it cider as such, so it's kind of probably very young pineapple wine or something. Very dry. But if you have it with some mango juice, absolutely gorgeous. Beautiful. No back sweetening. More fool me. Exciting things have been happening on the equipment front again. My handicraft knows no bounds. My wort chiller is finished. Check this out. Check this bad boy out. So, last time you'd have seen this beautiful piece of kit, the copper bit of it done, and today I went out and got the rest of it. So, this red tubing is a short length on one end, on the inlet. This hose connector, and this sort of male-to-male hose connector, which was actually a bit of a rip-off because that was about £5 compared to that, which was £1. This hose is about £5. I probably could have got that a bit cheaper. That's actually one of these washing machine pipes, I think. And then because it's not a perfect fit and it's under some kind of mains water pressure, I've got a couple of Jubilee clips there, which when I first turned it on, kind of pissed water a bit out of one of them, tightened it up a bit, tried it again and it was dribbling a little bit out of the other one, tightened it up a bit, and now it's just tight enough without being over tight, because this copper is quite soft, but then that works a treat. Stick that back in there, stick the male back in the female, as it were. And yeah, it works. Had a bit of a trial run earlier in my brew pot, which is that. So, on the equipment front, last week I did a little bit about the fact that I had a new mash tun, or rather a second-hand cool box that someone had started bodging into a mash tun. Basically, it was a bit of a bodge job. As you may be able to see, I've got rid of everything that was in here, which was 15 mil copper pipe, and this is what it was actually. If you can see that, that's kind of a hose tail, hose connector, and it also had this to seal it, and then I had a load of that kind of bathroom sealant in there as well. So that, as you can see, you may be able to see, isn't actually the right size. I just slit it to make it fit. Okay, whatever. But the actual hose tail thing itself wasn't not really the right fitting, I don't think, for that position in the mash tun, because it doesn't allow you to have any kind of tap on there unless you fit something, a bit of hose onto that, then have a tap in line going to more hose, or a tap on the end of a bit of hose. Then that's not really a good setup, I don't think. So I'm kind of glad I dug it all out now. I went to the hardware shop earlier to look for all the stuff for my water chiller, like the hose and stuff. I also had a look at copper pipe and things that I would need for my mash tun to finish it off, to create a manifold, and to all the fittings required to get it through the wall of the mash tun, and a tap and everything needed for that. And so you might remember from last week, I have a load of these T-shapes and elbows in 15mm copper. But from what I've seen, 22mm seems to be the preferred kind of size for these copper pipes. It's a bit bigger than that. These, I'm wondering about these in terms of, could you get stuck sparges and things if you use copper piping of this size, because it's more likely to get clogged up. I'm not quite sure. I think I need to do a bit more research into it. Because I'm just getting into extracts, and because I've just done my water chiller, I thought I'd give it a dry run, not with beer, but just with water. So I boiled some water up in my kind of stock pot, in my boiling pot, for the first time. See how long it would take. 12 litres, and that took about 40 minutes. It was quite a long time to reach boiling, and even then I don't think it really reached a proper rolling boil. There were bubbles coming up from the bottom, but it wasn't much churning and bubbling at the top of the water. I've got one of those hobs with a proper kind of wok burner, so like a double ring of gas flame, you know. So it's quite a big hot burner, but I don't think it was producing a proper rolling boil, which I'm a bit disappointed about. When I was doing that, I took the opportunity to use my thermometer that I bought quite recently off eBay for like £3. Digital thermometer. It's the kind that actually I think is designed for kind of sticking into meat to see when it's cooked through and that sort of thing. And interestingly enough, it was boiling, and the thermometer kept going up over 100 degrees Celsius to like 105 or 107 or something like that. At which point I thought, I don't think that's possible. This obviously isn't calibrated correctly. I then cooled it down, used the water chiller, worked like a dream. Thought, bloody hell, that's really quick. It cooled down in like 15 minutes. I thought, I'm sure they said it'd take, if you get it down in less than half an hour to like below 27 degrees Celsius or whatever, that's you know, it's good going. And then I realised, obviously, actually, it's because I'm not using a full brew length. It's only 12 litres, so. But anyway, it works well. And so what I wanted to do was use my thermometer to see, obviously, how hot the water was, or how cool the water was, for transferring it and pitching yeast and that sort of thing. And it was saying like 50 degrees, and I was like, this is not 50 degrees. It feels quite cool. And I went and got my old school glass thermometer from upstairs, and it was saying, 25 or whatever, which felt about right. So I thought, shit, this thermometer's crap, it's not working. And then I went to, earlier on, just now, to take a few photos of a demonstration of it, to show how it isn't working for you guys. And actually, I boiled some water in the kettle, put it in one of my Kilner jars, put both thermometers in at the same time, and actually, my glass thermometer was only going up to about 75 degrees. Whereas that digital thermometer was going up to like 90 plus, which is much more realistic in terms of what I think the temperature should have been just after I boiled it, obviously. So now I'm in a quandary. I'm going to have to keep experimenting, I think. Bit of a loss. I'm at a bit of a loss with that. It's not really important right now, but obviously when I start having to measure the temperature to make sure it's cool enough for transferring and everything after I've boiled it, it will become important. And when I get my all grain setup sorted out for mashing, obviously the temperature regulation is really critical. So I'm a bit stumped. The first thing I do when I get back in brewing terms will probably be to make an extract beer. Which brings me nicely on to kind of a main subject today actually. It's about yeast. Now, being more of a kit brewer so far, I'm well into these little dry sachets of dried yeast, which you don't know how old they are, not probably as effective as liquid yeasts, a very generic type of yeast. Probably they've always seemed to have worked reasonably well for me and everything. But I've come to the point now where I've got 3 extracts worth of ingredients, Timothy Taylor Landlord, Bateman's Triple XB and Brack's Beer Special, and having read about, so I have 2 lots of yeast at the moment. I've got a Nottingham yeast which I bought with all those ingredients the other day, and I also have a Jervin yeast from Wilkinson's, and now I hear apparently those 2 yeasts are basically exactly the same thing. So Jervin is Nottingham, which is wonderful, much to my surprise. And they both reputedly provide a kind of neutral, dry finish beer. And a dry beer isn't necessarily what I'm after. If I was making kind of Old Speckled Hen or something like that, I can imagine that might work quite well because it's quite a dry finishing beer. But looking at it, I'm not sure they'll be that well suited to those 3 beers that I'm making. So I started looking at liquid yeasts and having a really cursory look. They're like 6 or 7 pounds a pop, which compared to like one or 2 pounds for dry yeast, or nothing if you're recycling it, is that's quite a lot of money. And it's not really where I'm at with it. I'm kind of really tempted to just go sod it. I'm going to make these extracts with Nottingham yeast. I'm sure it will really be really nice. It might not be exactly like Timothy Taylor Landlord, but it will be really nice. Another part of me thinks, well, actually, if you recycle it, if I got a liquid yeast that was more appropriate to maybe all 3 of those styles compared to the Nottingham yeast, then I could get one lot of the yeast. Like I know, for example, that White Labs, I think it is, has a Timothy Taylor Landlord style yeast, or so a website told me. So if I got that and I made Timothy Taylor and I recycled that yeast using these, and use them on the Bateman's Triple XB and the Brack's Beer Special, would those beers be nicer for it? I'm not quite sure. That makes it a little bit more palatable in terms of cost, because that's you're getting more towards £2 or £3 a pop for the yeast then. Of the 2 main reasons why I kind of homebrew, economics and hobbyist, being a hobby, just kind of going from dry sachet yeast, economically viable, more towards, oh sod it, it's a hobby, spend a few more quid, get a nicer beer. And every time I cross over that boundary, I kind of think, shit, not am I doing the right thing, but is it worth spending that much more money, especially at this stage, just make a nice beer with dry yeast, whatever. Okay, so that's the main topic of conversation for tonight. Yeast, and is it worth having liquid yeasts, using liquid yeasts? So I'm off to make this book a little bit more careworn than it already is by having a bit of a read. Look at that, disgraceful. And that's all from me for this week. Auf Wiedersehen.